the Ravens came out and said that this was strictly a football decision. Now, I think that's absolutely bullshit because if this was a football decision, I don't think you cut Justin Tucker after just one bad season. I think you at least give Justin Tucker the benefit of the doubt to go to training camp and at least compete with the rookie for the starting job. We're back with Football Forecast Offseason Edition. He's Kaynen Buckshot. I'm Anthony Balester. We got a lot to get into this episode. Maybe not as much as last week, but definitely a lot of news. We had, George Pickens, who, was in his final year of his contract. Obviously, he had some off-the-field issues and wasn't the best teammate. So it looks like Pittsburgh is shipping him off to the Cowboys. So we got to discuss that. Justin Tucker finally got released from the Ravens. We got to mention that as well. Tom Brady talking about Shedeur Sanders, and we also got much more. So definitely make sure to stay tuned. Also make sure to be following us on all social medias at TFB Forecast ETV. Also be making sure to check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ETB Network for all your other shows, the MMA news, baseball news, basketball news. We got it all. We're also very close to the 1,000 subscriber mark. So definitely make sure to subscribe and hit that button. Also make sure to check out our ETB Substack at etbnetwork.substack.com for all your other shows and exclusive content. And make sure to listen to us however you like to listen to your podcast. And listen to the Football Forecast on your AirPods or listen on the go, however you like to listen to your podcast. And the show Football Forecast is presented by Playback. We're going to have more about that in the middle of the show. But before we get into this, Kaynen, how are you doing this week?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Same old. How about yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. Definitely glad that we're talking football and not talking basketball because as a Cavs fan, I feel like my heart's been ripped out of my chest this week. So I'm glad that we're talking football. But we got to start out with the biggest news and something that just happened just recently. And that was the receiver from the Pittsburgh Steelers, George Pickens, was traded to the Dallas Cowboys. Now, this was something that has been brewing for quite some time. George Pickens is a guy who is due for a contract extension, and he hasn't really been the best teammate. He kind of hasn't been the best locker room guy, and he seems like a guy that you really want to give an extension to. He's kind of the guy that maybe if he gets his money, maybe he doesn't work hard. And there's a reason why he dropped in the draft to the Pittsburgh Steelers was because he had some of these similar issues back in college at Georgia. So the thing is, the guy has the talent. The guy can be a top 5 receiver in this league. But, he kind of lets his attitude get in the way. There's times where he just gives up on routes and doesn't be a good teammate and doesn't give his quarterback any favors. Now, I know Pittsburgh hasn't had great quarterback play for most of the time he's there. But you got to try to help out your young quarterback or their struggling veteran quarterback as much as you can. And then also when you look at the fact that the Steelers already brought in DK Metcalf, who's the number 1 receiver, and Pickens was already causing problems before. Now, if he's going to be getting less targets in the contract year, he might cause more problems. And then when you look at the history of the Pittsburgh Steelers, when they trade receivers who are head cases, yeah, they may have a little success, but they never have quite the success that they had once before. You look at guys like Antonio Brown, you look at others, they didn't do too well. Chase Claypool, another name as well. So a lot of these guys did not have the same success once the Pittsburgh Steelers decided to move on from these guys, and Pittsburgh may be another one. Now, he does go to the Dallas Cowboys where, again, he's going to probably be their number 2 receiver behind CeeDee Lamb. Now, Dak Prescott's a guy who, when he does have protection, and they did draft offensive line, so he can get the ball out and distribute to guys throughout the whole game. So, he can get his target share, and maybe the Dallas Cowboys can give him his money. But there's definitely a lot of questions here, Kaynen. But what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it was due to the contract disputes. Like you said, his contract's coming up. They just gave a boatload of money to DK Metcalf, and if Pickens is already concerned about targets and whatever, what's he going to think when DK gets there? So, yeah, I can see why they parted ways with each other. The trade happened. It'll be interesting to see what he does with CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott, because if he thought he wasn't going to get the ball with DK Metcalf, he's definitely not going to get it when CeeDee Lamb's out there. Like you said, he's going to be wide receiver too, so I'm not really sure if that was the problem. even though you're right, he did give up on a lot of routes. He was fighting someone down the field on run plays. Like he was just doing all types of stuff. But all that being said, I do think he's going to go out next season and earn himself like a really ridiculous contract. And after that, I'm not really sure. So
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting, Kane. What team, if it is the Dallas Cowboys, who is going to give him that contract extension? Because any team that does decide to do that, it is going to come with a lot of risk. And also, when you do look at their skill sets, yes, you do have the questions of whether Pickens could be okay as a teammate being a number 2 receiver. But when you look at their skill sets, he does have a similar skill set to DK Metcalf. Now, he's not nearly as big or as strong, but he is kind of like that physical receiver that you can just throw it up to. He could also go deep with them, and he could just outstrength guys. So they do got a lot of skill sets that are similar. And, it is kind of redundant having both those guys. And then also, how can you afford having both those receivers? I mean, this isn't the Cincinnati Bengals. You don't have Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. As great as these 2 receivers are, Pickens and Metcalf, they're not what the Cincinnati Bengals have. So you can't afford to pay both those guys. So it definitely makes a lot of sense. But, Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin seeming to be towards the end of his tenure there, and with some of their older players, it seemed like Pittsburgh was kind of like in this win now mode, and with the rumors of them potentially bringing in Aaron Rodgers, it seems as though they really worried about the future. It seems like they wanted to have one more run with Mike Tomlin and TJ Watt and possibly Aaron Rodgers, and maybe finally get past the first round of the playoffs for a while. Now, when you trade George Pickens, yes, now you get something for him instead of losing him for nothing in free agency next year. But it's like, how is this team really going to compete? And as good as I still think Aaron Rodgers is, and as good as I think T.J. Watt in that defense is, and Metcalf is the number 1 receiver, that's a very, very thin receiving core. And if any injuries whatsoever happen to DK Metcalf, you're looking at probably the worst receiver core in football. So I'm not sure if this receiver core is good enough or strong enough now without George Pickens to get out of the first round. And it makes you question, what are the Pittsburgh Steelers doing? Are they trying to build for now, or are they trying to build for the future? Obviously, Dallas, with Dak Prescott, they're trying to win now. So that's why they went out and made this trade. And now when you look at Tyler Booker, the offensive lineman they drafted, yes, the Dallas Cowboys still need help at running back. They brought in some other, mid-tier free agents that may be able to get the job done. You got J.K. Dobbins out there as a free agent. Maybe they could bring him in. But the Cowboys seem like a better football team now. And obviously Pittsburgh's not. And it seems like Dallas is trying to win. And Pittsburgh, a team that should be trying to win now with the way the roster is constructed, is not trying to win now. So that's the one thing that I got to question. And, it seems like they didn't even really get a lot for Pickens. I think it was like a 3rd-round pick and then another pick that's conditional. So it seems like they didn't even get a whole lot for him. And then the thing is, if Pickens gets a big contract, they could have got a 3rd-round pick anyways, compensatory, even by just losing them. So I kind of think Pittsburgh made a mistake. I think they should have kept Pickens to try to compete for next year. But Kaynen, another team that's in their division, that decided to release a guy who has a lot of controversy going on, and that's Justin Tucker. A guy who we've had on the show quite some time. Probably maybe the 4th time we spoke about him in the last 3 months. And obviously this won't be the last time. We still haven't got a clarification on if the allegations are true or if anything's been proven. The legal proceedings still have to take forth. But Justin Tucker, in terms of football-wise, has been released from the Baltimore Ravens. Timing-wise, it does make sense. The Ravens did just finally go out and draft a kicker. So I think they were trying to make sure they at least got a kicker that they liked. But also, too, Kaynen, the Ravens came out and said that this was strictly a football decision. Now, I think that's absolutely bullshit, because if this was a football decision, I don't think you cut Justin Tucker after just one bad season. I think you at least give Justin Tucker the benefit of the doubt to go to training camp and at least compete with the rookie for the starting job. The fact that you didn't even let him compete for the starting job and just cut him signified to me that this isn't just a football decision. It's a combination of the football decisions, the fact they didn't play well last year, but also the off-field issues that is just not worth him being on the roster. That's just my opinion. But what are your thoughts about this, Kaynen?
yeah, I agree with you. It's definitely more than football. When you're talking about a guy like Justin Tucker, you're talking about one of the greatest kickers. I think he has the highest field goal percentage in the history of the NFL. But I mean that this is kind of what we expected when we heard about all the allegations and whatnot. Uh, As much as it's not a football issue, I think it kind of leached into that area because it became a huge distraction and it showed in his performance last year. He just had a slump. So uh, good on the Ravens for drafting that kicker, Tyler Loop. Looks like he has a really heavy leg, which is good when you get like the crappy weather like you do in Baltimore. So that's good for them.
Yeah, 100% Kaynen. And for a guy like Justin Tucker, who, yeah, maybe he may not have made the Hall of Fame, making the Hall of Fame as a kicker is super, super tough. I mean, you literally got to be undoubtedly the greatest kicker of all time because only a couple of these guys get into the Hall of Fame. So maybe Tucker would have had a hard time making the Hall of Fame. But up until this point, Kaynen, he's been one of the faces and one of the, the heart and souls of the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, you're talking about a guy, like you said, highest field goal percentage in NFL history. He's got that 66 game winning kick, and he's just known for never missing. And now for basically his whole legacy to be tarnished, no one's going to remember him as this Super Bowl champion, one of the greatest kickers that ever lived. They're just going to remember him for the allegations, unfortunately. And, hopefully maybe we'll get lucky and maybe we'll find out that this was all a lie and that he was innocent. But with all the evidence that's out there and with all the people that have come out forth, it doesn't seem like he's going to be proven innocent. And it seems like, we said before, it's going to be another Deshaun Watson situation where, yeah, maybe he doesn't get any jail time. Maybe he pays some money to some people. But at the end of the day, you knew he was guilty. And unfortunately, we're going to have to view him that way. And his character and his reputation will be tarnished for the rest of the time. So it's unfortunate. But, hey, I guess that's the risk you take when you play stupid games. The Football Forecast is presented by Playback. Watching sports is fun, but it's more fun with others. We spend way too much time watching it alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, from repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. Now back to the show. Shedeur Sanders was obviously, the quarterback everybody talked about and everybody knew, and everybody thought would be a first-round pick. And as we talked about it last week, he unfortunately dropped to the 5th round for probably decisions that weren't related to what he accomplished on the football field, but more so his attitude. Well, Tom Brady, who's kind of been like a mentor to Shedeur Sanders, obviously because of his relationship with his dad, Dion, he's known Shedeur basically almost his whole life, and it's kind of been his mentor. And that's a little bit of why Shedeur Sanders chose the number 12. He likes Tom Brady. Tom Brady's given him a lot of advice over the years. And Tom Brady did state in terms of the Raiders not drafting him, Tom Brady didn't have a say with the draft process. So a lot of people were like, oh, well, because Tom Brady and the Raiders didn't draft him, it means Tom Brady doesn't think he's no good. Well, that's not necessarily the case. Tom Brady, is just a minority owner. He had no say in the draft process. So that's not really, a telltale sign of what Shedeur Sanders will become. But he did say, he texted Shedeur Sanders and said, hey, use this, as motivation. He was also on the Logan Paul Impulsive podcast and was talking a little bit about Shedeur and then just also saying some stuff about his, experiences. And he basically said, yeah, as a first-round pick or even the 19th overall pick, you're obviously going to get more opportunities for the starting role and for playing time than you do as a 6th-round pick. But you're going to get an opportunity. Yeah, maybe as a 5th-round pick, you only get that one opportunity, but you will get an opportunity. And at the end of the day, it's up to you to make the most of it. Tom Brady knew as a 6th-round pick, he may only get that one opportunity. And once he got that opportunity when Drew Bledsoe got hurt, he made the most of it. Now, Shedeur Sanders is going to be in a similar situation as a 5th-round pick in a loaded quarterback room. He's going to have to go in there, earn the respect, earn the players in the locker room's respect, and then go out there and beat out the guys. What's going to probably happen is, as I said before, he's not going to be named the starter. He's going to have to beat out Dillon Gabriel first and then probably stay as the 3rd string to start. And then whoever, wins it between Flacco and Kenny Pickett, if we get midseason, his team's not doing so well, that's going to be Shedeur Sanders' opportunity. And his future is going to depend on what he does with that opportunity. And, he doesn't want to hear excuses about, oh, I didn't get a fair shot or I didn't get as many opportunities as the next person. It doesn't matter how many opportunities you get. If you get one opportunity and if you don't make it, at the end of the day, that's on you. And I absolutely agree with Tom Brady. So Shedeur Sanders is going to have to do what Tom Brady did and earn that one opportunity he gets and make the most of it. But what are your thoughts, Kaynen, on Tom Brady giving Shedeur some advice?
Yeah, that was well said, Anthony. I think what Tom Brady said, that was the perfect way to attack the problem. And who better to speak on it than your boy there? But the draft's over. He got drafted later than he expected, but the bottom line is he made it to the NFL. So who really cares where you're drafted at that point? It's not like he's strapped for cash. I mean, his father's Deion Sanders. So he's really got nothing to worry about other than to go out there and prove everyone wrong. And that's just going to make it that much sweeter when he does. So it's really going to be a kick in the ass to everyone out there that doubted him. Uh, and I got to say, although I wasn't hyped on him at first, I'm excited to see if he could do that. I'm kind of rooting for him now, hoping he does good and wins that starting spot.
Yeah, absolutely agree, Keenan. I think, he's definitely a guy that maybe now with him falling in the draft, if he does become humble and he does start playing well and proving the doubters wrong, I think there's going to be a lot of people who maybe initially were put off by Shedeur Sanders who weren't a fan will ultimately end up becoming a fan. So like you said, Keenan, it doesn't matter where you're drafted. No one remembers, what pick you were drafted. And maybe, in some circumstances you were. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you're the first pick or whether you're the last pick like Brock Purdy. The only thing that's going to matter is wins and losses and what you accomplish in your career. And that's going to come down to one person and one person only, and that's going to come down to Shedeur Sanders. Another player, Keenan, who didn't drop in the draft, who went quite highly, but is causing a controversy for other reasons, is Abdul Carter, your boy, for your New York Giants. Now, he obviously wore the number 11, but he's looking for a different number. He wants the legendary 56 number that the greatest defensive player of all time and the greatest New York Giant wore in Lawrence Taylor. Now, in my opinion, I think it's a little disrespectful just to ask. It shows a lack of self-awareness just to even have the thought. That's like Drake May being drafted by the Patriots and being like, hey, guys, is there any way I can have number 12? It just doesn't work like that. I think there's got to be some level of respect. But what are your thoughts, Keenan?
This was really funny to me. Even though I do think he's going to go out there and like be a beast next season, it's really wild to ask the greatest player, not even just in the franchise, but the greatest player on the defensive side of the ball for his jersey number. I personally, and who cares what I think he should go out, get his own number, pave the way, and build his legacy behind that. I don't put it against Carter. I just think maybe he's got a screw loose and he's like just like really overconfident and probably thought he was like honoring Lawrence Taylor. But good luck to him because that's like a crazy first impression to put on the team there.
Yeah, I agree, Kenan. And the thing is, you're absolutely right. He shouldn't even want the number 56 because that number is always going to be signified and synonymous with one player, and it's never going to be him. Even if he is an All-Pro, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, he's never going to be as big or surpass Lawrence Taylor. So you should want to have a number that everybody would know as you, and the number that signifies and synopsis with you. And obviously he did wear the number jersey 11 in college. Now, the number 11 jersey is not something that you could wear with the Giants either because that's the number of Super Bowl quarterback Phil Simms. Now, Phil Simms actually was on board with potentially letting him wear the number 11, but his family ended up talking him out of it and saying, like, hey, like, you're a Super Bowl champion. You made your legacy. Let him get his own number. And I absolutely agree. And I still think Abdul Carter will be a great player. And I think, in a couple of years after he chooses his own number, this would be just one of those little things that kind of just comes forgotten about. But it's definitely odd, Keenan, and what a first impression to make on Giants fans to basically be like, hey, I want your greatest player's number, and I'm going to earn it. So it's definitely interesting, but I still think he'll be a great player. It's just he'll have to be a great player wearing a different number than Lawrence Taylor. But, we had another player who's also a pass rusher who unfortunately was cut, and that was the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers decided to part ways with Jadeveon Clowney. Now, Jadeveon Clowney was, a past number 1 overall draft pick, super hyped, multiple Pro Bowler, may not have lived up to the expectations. He was really hyped as to be one of the all-time greatest defensive players we ever seen. Maybe he wasn't quite that, but he's a huge, great run stuffer. And as he got older, he's gotten much better as a pass rusher as well. And he's been a Pro Bowler multiple times. So it's been a guy who's been one of the premier players. He had a great season in Baltimore. He got rewarded with a 2-year contract by the Carolina Panthers last season. Well, he played decent last year, but not quite as good as they probably thought. He was around the 5 to 6 sack mark. And Carolina Panthers had the worst defense in football last season. They went on and brought in and drafted 2 defensive ends and also went on and signed one. They brought in Patrick Jones. They drafted Nick Swarton and Princely Yu. So they got some young guys as well. And, they get out of Jadeveon Clowney's, contract. They decided just to part ways with him now. So it does make a lot of sense. They want to go in a younger direction. I think they will still have some dead cap money. So it's not like they're going to save a lot of money. But I think just in terms of getting the young guys reps and getting the young guys in there, I definitely think it makes complete sense. And Clowney being a little on the older side, he's definitely past his prime. I still think he'll get signed on a 1-year deal for very low money. But it seems like the Carolina Panthers are trying to have a completely new defense that was very disastrous last year, and they're kind of having this youth movement. But what are your thoughts, Kaynen, on Clowney being cut?
Yeah, it's sad to see players we grew up with get cut like this. I'm sure he'd be a good veteran addition to pass rush somewhere, whoever needs it. But I mean, what a player, like you said, coming out as a prospect, everyone thought he was going to be like the next guy on defense. To me, he has one of the best hits ever when he played for South Carolina. It was a dispute on where the ball was, if it was over the line or not, and the refs ended up giving it to the other team, and it kind of seemed like they cheated. And the next play, Jadeveon Clowney came down and he hit that guy, knocked his helmet off, knocked the ball loose, and scooped it up. That's one of the best plays in college football, I think. So it's sad to see guys like that get cut, but he's had an awesome career, like you said, and best of luck to him in the future.
Yeah, that hit cannon's always going to be vital forever. And I'm pretty sure that guy from Michigan didn't want to play football after taking a hit like that. Just to see his explosiveness. And, obviously players are getting bigger, faster, and stronger. But just to see a guy who, was 6'5", almost 6'6", 250, 260, 100, 260 pounds, running a 4.4. I mean, the guy was outrunning receivers and running backs, as a 260-pound edge rusher. So the guy was just super explosive. And, he definitely gave opposing offensive line and quarterbacks fits throughout the majority of his career. So, it's definitely unfortunate to see guys, everybody's got to have an end of their career sometime. But it definitely seems like Clowney's end is coming very near. But we got a guy who's on the younger side who was released, and that was Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis, the wide receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars, was cut. Now, obviously, he didn't play well or up to his contract last season, and he was a guy who struggled in Buffalo for the few years before he got to Jacksonville. But before I give my thoughts on this, Keenan, what were your thoughts about Gabe Davis being cut?
Yeah, this is just unfortunate. Jacksonville already has 2 really good wide receivers, or 1 really good wide receiver, potentially another generational receiver, that being Travis Hunter, and the one they have, Brian Thomas Jr., who had an amazing rookie year. So I mean, like if Gabe Davis just isn't producing, he's had issues with his knee, I believe, injury problems. There's just not room for him, and it's tough because I really like Davis. I liked him when he was part of the Bills. But I think he could find a home on a wide receiver needy team. Maybe Pittsburgh with Pickens leaving there, that he'd be a good backup, or like second, third guy maybe, because he's really good at catching the deep ball and he has really sure hands. It's really someone you can't it's not bad to have a guy like that on the team. You can't have too many guys like that. So it's unfortunate the Jags released him because I think he's from Florida, but I don't think he's done just yet. I think a team's going to pick him up coming up here.
Yeah, Kenan, I think a team that possibly could use him is a team that's also in Florida, and the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins could use a big physical receiver to go along with the two speed guys in Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. So that could be an option, Kaynen. And this is a guy who does have all the talent in the world. I mean, we've seen some in the games like against the Chiefs in the playoffs where the guy had 4 touchdowns. So you see when he's on, he can be a number 1 receiver. It's the problem is it's a confidence thing. He's a great locker room guy. He never complains. He plays through injuries. He basically does everything he wants. He works hard. But I just think he just lets it get to his head, and I think he does a lot of bad concentration drops. I think when he has a lot of easy catches, he'll drop them because I think he doesn't have the confidence, and I think he's thinking about it too much. And I just think at some point, with the struggles he's had, it's only gotten worse. And I know last year he did play through injuries. He didn't complain. He tried to be the best teammate he can. But at some point, you got to produce on the field as well, and you can't just be a locker room guy. And I think that's why the Jacksonville Jaguars have decided to move on. This is a team who's going to have a completely different receiving core because they also got rid of Christian Kirk as well. So they're not going to be very thin. And this signifies to me that Travis Hunter is going to get a lot of playing time at wide receiver. So all those people wondering, what position is he going to play more? It definitely seems like he may be, more on the receiver side and maybe just sprinkling in a little bit of corner in really important third down situations. Because now when you make the moves that they did, Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter are only the real receivers that they have that you probably can rely on. So Travis Hunter is going to be a guy who's going to have to play a majority of the downs at receiver. So, now when we're wondering where he's going to play, I think this kind of gives us our answer. And it definitely is going to be very exciting to see Brian Thomas Jr. on one side and Travis Hunter on the other. If their offensive line can block, there's really no more excuses for Trevor Lawrence and why he can't succeed. But speaking of the draft, Keenan, I know it's definitely way too early to be talking about this, but it's fun. It's a fun exercise, and everybody after the draft always likes to give people a preview of what's to come. So we got to discuss an early look at what's ahead at the 2026 NFL Draft, and there's definitely a lot of prospects, Keenan, that's interesting in. But before I talk about the prospects, what are your thoughts, Keenan, when you look ahead a year to the prospects potentially at next year's draft?
Yeah, obviously you got Arch Manning. I really like Arch Manning. He brings something we haven't seen from the Mannings, which is his speed, of course. He moves around really well for a bigger QB, and more importantly, he's got a really big arm on him. He can chuck the football down the field. So I like him. All that paired with help from his uncles. I don't know if you've heard of him. I believe he could be the first QB off the board next year and make a splash in the league for whoever needs him. I've seen a lot of drafts say the Saints possibly picking him up. So that'd be really interesting to see. And another really early prediction, I like Jeremiah Love, the running back from Notre Dame. He was on tear last season as well as the whole Notre Dame team. I really liked watching them play. He had over 1,000 rushing yards, 17 touchdowns, and one of them was a 98-yard rush in the playoffs. He's just electric. I really like running backs like that. They just can rip down the field, carry the ball over and over. I think he's going to be a monster. And the last guy is Caden Proctor from Alabama. He is 6'7", 369 pounds, and he plays tackle. I think he's going to be someone to watch next year. He's been an absolute animal, and he has a lot of skill for a guy of his stature. So that combination, I think that's going to make him awesome in the NFL.
Yeah, you brought up some great players, Keenan, and you brought up Arch Manning potentially being drafted by the Saints next year. I mean, what a tremendous storyline that would be. His grandfather, Archie Manning, was drafted and played by the Saints his entire most of his career. And it's funny because New Orleans is also where his father and his uncles were born too. And the Saints haven't drafted a quarterback in the first round since his grandfather. So there'd be a lot of interesting storylines there. Now I know a lot of people, say, we shouldn't consider Arch Manning, even though he is eligible for next year's draft, because they said when you look at the history of the Mannings, they typically like to stay in college a little longer. They like to have multiple years of starting because they're in the Bill Parcells mindset where if you're a quarterback in the NFL, your success rate really hinges on what you did in college, because the more starts experience you have in college, the more better equipped you are for the NFL. And there's a huge correlation with the more starts you have in college, the better quarterback you are. And then when you look at what his uncles did, Peyton Manning could have been the number 1 overall pick potentially by the New York Jets in 1997. He decided to come back to college another year, had the best year of his career in college, and then was the number 1 pick the year after. He wanted to have his 4 years, and he wanted to have more experience. And then when you look at his other uncle, Eli Manning, he could have been a first-round pick in 2003. And he decided to come back for his 5th and final season at Ole Miss because he wanted more experience. And we see how that worked out for those guys. Now, when you look at Arch Manning, yeah, he's heading into his 3rd season, but he's essentially heading into his 1st season as the starter. He redshirted his 1st year and didn't really play. And last year he played and started a couple of games while Quinn Ewers was injured, but he didn't play against great competition. So this is essentially his 1st year now starting. And I think the Mannings would love for him to have 2 years of starting before he could come to the NFL. So, maybe we might not see him to 2027. Now, that would suck as a football fan because I want to see Arch Manning in the NFL as soon as possible because with his athleticism, potentially maybe having a Peyton Manning or Eli Manning accuracy and smarts, I mean, that's going to be a guy I don't know how you defend. But some other guys we got to look at in this draft, 2 guys from Clemson. You got T.J. Parker and Peter Woods. And these are 2 guys who were top prospects coming out of high school, and they've lived up to expectations. I mean, T.J. Parker last year as a sophomore was one of the top sack artists in the country. And now he's coming into his 3rd season. And then you look at Peter Woods, the defensive lineman. He's a guy who could play all over the defensive line. And, we've seen Clemson produce some great defensive linemen before with Brian Breesy and others. And T.J. Parker and Peter Woods are just as good, if not better, than any of the other defensive linemen who come off from Clemson. So these guys are really top-notch players. We also got to mention potentially maybe the best safety prospect we've ever seen, and that's Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs is a guy who could play nickel, he could play corner, he could play safety, he could play linebacker. He started off at Alabama, and as a freshman, he was already the best safety in college football. And then as a sophomore, he went to Ohio State, was a part of one of, if not the best defense in college football, won the national championship, and as a sophomore was in the conversation for the best defensive player. Now coming into his 3rd year, he could only get better. He's basically a better version than all the other great safeties we've seen come out the last few years, like a Malachi Starks or a Kyle Hamilton. He's basically a much better version of all those guys. I know we don't see safeties go too high, but if there's ever one to go high, it's definitely going to be Caleb Downs. It's going to be a great tackle draft, Kaynen. Like you said, Kaynen Proctor, the tackle from Alabama, he's huge. He's like 6'7", over 340 pounds. Came right in as an 18-year-old freshman and started in the SEC going up against NFL talent each and every week. So he's going to be a great player. You got the tackle from Miami, Francis, who's really good. You got Spencer Fanu, the tackle from Utah. Both those guys got tremendous potential as well. Some other guys on defense I'll mention. You got Uwangule, DJ Uwangule's little brother. He's a tremendous pass rusher who had a lot of sacks last year. He's going to be great entering his 3rd year. Gerald McCoy, the shutdown corner from Tennessee. He's a decent player you got to mention. Anthony Hill Jr., potentially the top linebacker from Texas. He's a tremendous player as well. He's a do-it-all guy who has tremendous athletic ability. Jeremiah Love, he's a beast. Could have probably been the 2nd best running back if he had been eligible for this year's draft. So he's got 1st round all over him. And then last thing I'll say is the quarterbacks. This is got potential to be a very good quarterback class. You got a guy like Lenora Sellers, potentially from South Carolina, who has all the talent in the world, 6'4", over 230 strong arm. He just got to get the accuracy down, just like we see with other guys. If he can get the accuracy down, he's a guy who's definitely worthy of a top 3 pick. Drew Eller, a guy who has Josh Allen type arm strength, just like what we said with Lenora Sellers, just has to get more consistent. But he's got all the talent in the world, and he could have came out this year and potentially been the 2nd quarterback taken and maybe been a Giants quarterback over Jackson Dart. But he decided to come back and maybe improve his draft stock. You also got Sam Levitt from Arizona State. He's a young quarterback that's got potential. He's got mobility. He's got arm strength. Kate Klubnik, kind of like a better version of Bo Nix. And then you got Garrett Nussmeier, who's the LSU quarterback who he can make all the throws, but he also makes some dumb decisions. But he could be that next quarterback like we've seen from Joe Burrow and Gene Daniels, where after his 5th year of college, he becomes one of the premier quarterbacks in college football. So we got a lot of players in this draft, Kaynen, and I can't wait to see the quarterbacks and the other players that break out next year to make next year's draft class so exciting. But that's going to do it here for the football forecast. Definitely make sure to be following us on all social medias at TFB Forecast ETB. Also be making sure to follow and watch and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ETB Network. We're very close to 1,000 subscribers, so help us get there. Also make sure to check out our ETB Substack at etbnetwork.substack.com. And also be making sure to listen to us however you listen to your podcast. And also the show is presented by Playback. We'll catch you next week.